This is the Real Estate Investing 365 podcast, your go-to source for real estate investing strategies so you can start living the life you want and get where you want to go. With your host, Justin Hanna.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Another episode. Today I got with me Jay Helms. You guys have probably heard of him on some other podcasts, Bigger Pockets and Joe Fairless's show, all kinds of places. But he's down in Pensacola, right, Jay?
Yeah, Pensacola,
Florida. So thanks for being here, man. I really appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to come and talk on whatever podcast I'm on. But today we're on yours, right? So let's
my millions of viewers out there, my millions of listeners.
That's it.
He's got his own podcast, right? W2 Capitalist, or is it just your program?
No, W2 Capitalist is the name of the podcast as well.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, thanks again for being here. And why don't you get started? Just tell everybody kind of who you are if they haven't heard of you, like where you come from, how you got started in this whole thing, and then we'll dive off into some specifics.
Yeah, that's always a loaded question. And there are, I am sure, no one's heard of me. At least that's the way I feel like quite often, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, so born and raised in Alabama. I now live in Florida with my wife, and we moved down here about 10 years ago. And we started looking at, I was a startup at an IT company or one of the, I wouldn't say founding members. I was a principal, right, of this startup IT company. And we had a lot of fun. And then we got bought out and, we got acquired by somebody else. And that acquisition went really, really bad. And then we got a few years later go by, and then we got bought out again, and it even got worse, if you can believe it or not. So along those lines, and even up to the first acquisition, my wife and I, girlfriend at the time, but now wife, she and I we got the bug like a lot of people did, watching HGTV shows and that thing, So then we moved to Florida, and we're like, all right, how do we make this happen? Because we're living paycheck to paycheck, and it's just, the job sucks. The clients that I had nurtured and really kind of held on to for like a decade were now leaving, and they were saying, hey, it's not you, it's the company and all this other stuff. And that was just a real hit to my ego, and it's one of those things where, all right, something's got to change. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, before we hit the record button, you were talking about you had recently had a baby. So we found out amongst the first acquisition, we discovered baby number one was on the way, right? And I'm sitting here fearful that I'm going to get laid off because the acquisition in general, not to mention how horrible it was going.
Yeah.
And then I stumbled upon Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is a lot of investors, recommend and talk about whatnot. And it is the number one gift that I buy for expecting fathers. So if you are an expecting father, email me, J@W2Capitalist, and I will send you a copy of that. That book provided so much of a paradigm shift for me in how to create wealth that it was just like, all right, this is the moment. Let's go do this.
It's so good. It's like, it's so simple, but it's so good because it's like a story that's relatable,
Yes.
It tells it in simple terms, and you like listening, you're following the story. So I love it. I just got to keep rereading it,
And you have to break it down in simple terms for me to understand it. So it's
Alabama.
that's probably why I liked it so much. But, so we started reading that and trying to figure out, all right, there's so many different ways you can invest in real estate. We didn't have any money. Let's try this whole wholesaling thing, Quickly figured out that not only did I buy the wrong list, but my personality was not to hustle somebody out of their property, right? Like I would tell people, like, and it still is not. I still have never sold a deal, never flipped a deal, but I've started calling owners again because I want to find some properties that are off market and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And I was texting a couple yesterday, as a matter of fact, and hey, would you consider a cash offer on your property? And they're like, absolutely. And so we kind of go back and forth. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. Tell me about this lien that's on your property for like $9,000 or whatnot. And the owner responded was, "What are you talking about?" Like,
Didn't even
all
know.
right, she's playing me. It's a lady. She's playing me. She knows exactly what I'm talking about. And she didn't. She goes, "Can you send me a screenshot of what you're talking about? Because this is kind of freaking me
Oh
out." Right.
no.
And it turns out she did not know that there's a federal tax lien on her property. She didn't know about it. But that was not just one, that was two that happened like that yesterday.
Oh wow.
And so I'm just like, all right, I guess I'm just helping you guys out where I don't know, wholesaling has a bad name, has a bad rap for a lot of people anyway. And I can't be one of those guys. So we quickly figured that out. Right. And even today, still not that guy. But I am trying to find some off market properties. And so we went from there, like, all right, what can we buy? What can we do? Really like the buy and hold idea, really like the cash flow idea. If we can replace my income with, or not necessarily my income, we first looked at, can we just pay for our mortgage with other rental properties? Right. At the moment we lived in a house, it was, I don't know, we'll say $1,000. It was somewhere around there. Can we get enough rental income to cover our mortgage? And that was our goal, right? That was our goal to start. And it was like, okay, how do we do this? And this was probably about no, it wasn't about, it was 2014. This is when all this was going down. Acquisition happened. The horrible acquisition happened. Baby number one is on the way. Some wife's, 5-6 months pregnant. And we figured out, I was like, all right, let's buy a foreclosure that doesn't need a whole lot of work, something that we can afford. And we figured out pretty quickly that banks aren't interested to give you a loan of anything less than 50 grand, most of them.
Mhm.
Right. Well, we ended up finding this property it was a 1 bedroom, 1 bath, $22,000 was the purchase price of it. It's a foreclosure. Right. And the house that we had, our primary residence, we had lived there long enough. We had built up enough equity. Like, maybe we can get a home equity line of credit to go buy this property. Right.
Yeah, because it's difficult to get the loan because it's so cheap.
Because you can't most banks aren't interested in loaning to anything under 50 grand. That's probably changed a lot here since COVID and everything that's been going on in the last year or whatnot. But we were able to get a home equity line of credit. I don't know, that's a tongue twister for me right now.
Yeah.
But we were able to get a HELOC and pay for not only that, but we also put $9 grand into renovations. It needed a new roof, paint, flooring in some areas, and some plumbing and stuff. But it was, it was done and it rented right away. Right. We closed on this property when our son was 3 weeks old, and it was amazing. So since then he's been to like 15 different closings, and we've had 2 other kids, and
Right.
it's been an incredible ride so far. But yeah, that's kind of how we got started, was that whole paradigm shift of what was happening with the acquisition, knowing that I didn't want to be, at this point in time, didn't want to be working for who I was working for. How do I get it out of this? How do I also still provide for my family, growing family at that, right? Because we knew this wasn't going to be, we were hoping this wasn't going to be our only child to have. And it was just a lot of things that kind of built up over time to finally, I was like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah.
We got to figure this out. We got to figure out how to make it happen.
No, yeah, that's awesome. And the main reason I usually always start, and I always ask people, where they come from and what they're doing, is because, like, literally, I've interviewed people, and you hear it on other podcasts, from all different walks of life. So it doesn't matter if you're an IT guy or you're an engineer, like Ryan was. I just interviewed him. Everybody, if you're listening in succession to these podcasts, you should hear that one. Or whether you're a lineman or a construction worker, it just kind of gives relevancy to other people's jobs out there. So once you got that first house going, you got that rent check, you're like, man, this is sweet.
How do we do this again?
How do we keep going? Right. I get it.
That was it.
So that brought you up in through 2015 or so? That was in 14 when you got started, but you probably closed the house and stuff like that.
Well, we closed the house late 2014, and then we didn't buy anything for a couple of years. We kind of sat back, and we lucked out. We had one of the best tenants. Very first tenants. Is one of the only properties that we ever managed ourselves. We had told the story to ourselves that, hey, we've got a property manager. We don't need to pay somebody 10% to not really take care of our stuff. We can do it ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we lucked out, man. The girl that lived there, she worked at a technical college that's here in Pensacola. And one day she calls me and she says, hey, my air conditioner's not working. I was like, oh, okay. I'll call, the guy that I use and send him over. And he goes, well, she was going to ask you, I work for this technical college. We have HVAC technicians that can provide free labor. They'll have a certified person of any trade come with them. And if you're okay with it, I'll have them come look out. They could use the field experience because they're only doing stuff, in the lab, so to speak. And if there's any parts that are needed, then you'll have to pay for the parts, but the labor is going to be free. I was like,
Oh, wow.
yeah. What you got?
That's a great tip. That's a great tip too. So if anybody out there's got like a technical college next to them, reach out to them and see if they're willing to do some work. I guess if you got something going on.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I had to sign a disclaimer that if the students mess something up and, I wouldn't sue them or whatever the case was, but I was like, yeah, sure. Let's give it a shot. Turns out it was like a wire had come loose. I don't even know how this happened, but on the inside unit, wire had come loose. They were there and fixed it within 5 minutes. And
something
like,
so easy.
But that wasn't the only time I used them for stuff. But it was just one of those things where we looked at, we're like, all right, she pays on time. She's never called us in the middle of the night. About all these horror stories you hear on all these podcasts about, I don't want to be a property manager because I don't want to get the call late in the night about a toilet clogged. That's never happened to us.
Never happened to me either.
Yeah, I don't know who that happens to or what. If that happens to you, your systems suck. Let's just put it that way. It's just never happened. I mean, I don't think that happens to people who know what they're doing.
I literally just had a phone call from a friend yesterday, and he's like calling me and asking me, he wants to get started and all this stuff. And he's like, man, I just get so worried about. He's actually down there by you in the panhandle of Florida, or maybe he's right in Georgia or somewhere. Anyways. And he's like, I'm so worried about getting all these calls. And I'm like, listen, it's just like anything. If there's, 10 things that happen, 9 of them are good. You're only going to hear about that one bad thing that just spreads throughout everything. So it's not usually like that. And if it does, like you said, get your systems dialed in a little bit better.
Yeah. I don't know who started that rumor. I don't know where that started from, but if we could go back in time, that might be one of the things that I remove to help other people out, because it's just, it's never happened to me. But that and our next property are the only 2 properties that we ever personally manage, because life got real busy with this second acquisition. Second kid came along. Let the professionals handle it, right? Let them do it. So we decided to make that happen and never look back.
Sweet. So at some point, I would imagine, do you still work for an IT company, or where are you at right now?
No. So I was actually, I was in cybersecurity. So May of 2019, I left the acquisition after acquisition after acquisition company to work for a publicly traded company that dealt with cybersecurity. But then COVID happened, and I was laid off last year, May of 2020, me and like half my team. And it was just kind of a really bad situation for those folks. And I kind of, moped around the house for a couple of days after I got the call saying that, why do I get the pink slip when some other a-hole gets to keep his job, and, because being part of a public company, they have to disclose you when you're let go, everybody at your level, who stays and who goes. You're right. I'm like, this guy's staying. What?
Yeah, like,
who's the brown noser out of, anyway. But so I was a little upset about that. And I even offered to my boss, because the folks that I work with at my team, I was a manager at the time, one of those mid-level managers that, when things like this go down, it's usually the first layer of the chopping block, unless you're a new hire. And, I even offered to him, I said, look, man, I said, I really enjoy my team. I really enjoy what I'm doing. I can go without a paycheck for like 6 months. You guys want to trade some stock for that? I mean, how we can work that out. And he was like, this is bigger than that. I appreciate the offer, but it's bigger than that. We can't do that.
Yeah.
And so needless to say, that week, after I got my head out of my butt, I was like, all right, this is the kick in the pants that we needed to really focus on investing full time. Because at that time, we had 328 units. Most of those were made up of larger syndications, right? Where we're just a partial partner, somewhere on the GP side, somewhere on the LP side. And then we had our small portfolio just ourselves. I was like, we're from a financial situation, we're going to be fine. We have no issues whatsoever. It's just, you work a W-2 job for 20 years like I did. You get used to that paycheck. You get used to living a lifestyle a certain way and whatnot. There's a lot of fear. The FUD factor, as I've heard it called, is the fear, uncertainty, and doubt comes up. Like, what if, how are we going to afford insurance? How are we going to do this? What about retirement? Blah, blah, blah. And for the last, I don't know, what are we, 9 months away from that date? It's been interesting to go through and realize, all of those concerns, all of those worries, were nothing but that. They're just one of those things where, hey, we've never been here before. Now, the day that it happened, I looked at my wife and said, all right, we're on lockdown. We're going, we had gotten away from budgeting properly and just, hey, if we wanted to go do it, if we want to go buy it, yeah, sure, swipe it. We'll pay it off next month. Money's no issue, and then, but until we kind of figured out this whole balance of where we're going to land and whatnot, we're like, all right, let's take a step back, because there's like $10,000. Well, it was a little more than that of income a month that was coming in that now just
gone,
stopped. Right.
Yeah.
And so we had to adjust with that. But, the funny thing is I didn't realize, how much I would enjoy the freedom that we have. And not only that, but the challenge of being a full-time investor, not only just an investor, but also an entrepreneur with, growing the W-2 capitalist. So it's been a interesting last 9 months, but I'm digging it. I don't know that I will. It's going to be really hard if I ever have to go back to work an actual job. I was one of my buddies. We both got hired the same day, right? We both got let go the same day.
Is he the guy that didn't get? Oh, you got let go too. I was going to say, is he the guy that got held on?
No. And so he and I were Happy New Year and whatever. And I was like, hey man, you miss it? He was like, no. I was like, you going back? He goes, no, not missing it. And he actually has bought. He's a little bit older than I am. He's done really well, and he had bought some rental properties to help subsidize his income and whatnot, and he's doing pretty well with that. But he, the reason why what sparked that conversation is the company that we left, or we were laid off from. They just had another round of layoffs 2 weeks ago, and then we're like, wow, Happy New Year.
Yeah, what a bummer.
We no longer, at least they made it through Christmas. I do want to give them that, because I'd heard story. People have reached out to me all the time about their story, and want to invite your audience to do the same thing, because I feel like I've been there, done that. If you're going through a trying time, just reach out, and hopefully I can give you some words of wisdom, words of advice. People do it all the time. And one of the guys reached out to me here recently. He's in my mastermind, and he said, hey, yeah, my wife just got let go from her job. And it was like 2 weeks before Christmas.
Oh, what a bummer. Yeah.
And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, she's been with the company for 15 years. She just got let go, blah, blah, blah. It's like, man, what'd she do?
Yeah.
Nothing. They were just making cuts. I was like, 2 weeks before Christmas? Who freaking does that with a clear conscience and then be able to go celebrate Christmas with their family?
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, unfortunately, I think it's happening to a lot of people these days, and it's hurting like the people that it hurts the most. People that probably doesn't have a big savings or don't have rental property. As people getting hammered by this the most. But I totally know what you mean, because our stories are pretty similar. I worked at as a lineman on power lines for 13 years. And I just left in July. So, and went full time real estate in the podcast and stuff. So I know
Congratulations, sir. If I had
Thanks.
an alcoholic drink, I would definitely virtually cheers you right
cheers
now.
each other. I know, man. So, but I know what you're talking about. It's scary, like the fear factor of doing it. Like, what are you going to do? And I just had a new baby. I had a baby in October, right? Like after I left, and the insurance and all that. But our passive income doesn't cover all of our bills and our fun stuff, but it covers all of like our necessities, all of our bills that we have to pay. And then, from selling houses and real estate, we've have enough buffer to start something else. So, the scary factor of it is, but the funny thing I tell like my aunt and uncle, they just retired maybe 2 years ago, and they're pretty well off and they had their own businesses. And I was talking to them the other day and I said, it seems like now I don't know how I ever had a full-time job and did all this other stuff, because I feel so busy now, like doing all this stuff at home and trying the podcast and my business and all that stuff. It's like the day just fills up, right? It
does.
So much to do.
I've had a few people come to me since who follow me or knew me pretty well and since the layoff, and they're like, all right, I'm watching you. I feel like you're working more now than you did before you had a W-2. And I said, absolutely I am. I said, I don't, and here's the thing. I said, I feel like being let go now, I can focus on really what my BHAG is, right? My big, hairy, audacious goal. And the more I think about that and the more I focus on that, I realize, holy crap, I am nowhere near going. I mean, it's like a fire gets lit under me. I'm like, all right, I got to work harder at it, because I'm not anywhere closer to that than a man on the moon, right? And trying to get back to there. It's just one of those things like, oh, I needed this clarity. I almost thought about calling my old boss who let me go New Year's and tell him, hey man, thank you for doing that. I know, but I didn't. I just, I know he wasn't going to answer anyway. But it's just one of those things where I just kind of let it go. But I wanted to call him and tell him thank you for laying me off.
I understand that. One thing, if there's anybody out there thinking about quitting their job, the one thing I realized is that while you're stuck in a job, at least it was with me, I was working on power lines and in a truck all day and working overtime all the time. Your mind is not free to like think creatively about new projects, right? Because you're always stuck in the moment at your job, right? You're always thinking about that. And then by the time you get home, especially if you have family and kids, you're like, gosh, like your mind's not thinking the right way. So now that I'm not doing it, I'm sure you realize this too, like your mind starts working better and it starts working in a different way as opposed to like having tasks to do and like a set schedule. You're like, okay, it takes some time, but it'll start chugging along. And then all of a sudden it's like a J curve, just like investing. It's not linear, it's like progressive.
It takes off. And you got to keep that momentum, right? And that's my slogan for 2021 is keep your momentum. Matter of fact, I keep forgetting this, but we got some t-shirts printed up with that on there.
See?
And I've got to go get them. The guy emailed me and said, hey, these are ready. Do you want to come pick them up or do you want me to deliver it? If I deliver it, I take check or cash. I'm like, who has a checkbook these days? Like I don't do checks.
Take Apple Pay?
I don't think so.
Right on. Okay. Well, what is a W-2 capitalist exactly? Like what is the whole mantra behind it? And what do you help people do with it? Actually, just disclaimer, I didn't get Jay here to like because we're in cahoots or anything like about promoting something, but it's actually a good story and you help real people get out of like a grinder, especially right now during COVID. So this isn't like a planned advertisement, but tell us what W-2 capitalist is.
I'll try to not make it so advertising.
No,
but
go ahead. I mean, it's a cool thing.
So, the W-2 capitalist, our mantra is earn, invest, repeat, right? And, when I got laid off and I made that announcement, people were like, well, is it going to be 1099 capitalist now? Or, what about the earn, invest, repeat mantra? I was like, no. It's like the earn, invest, repeat mantra is always going to be there because you're earning money at your W-2 so that you can go invest in real estate, right? And you repeat that process. Well, then eventually you're going to have houses that are going to earn you rental income that you're going to turn around and invest that back in, right? So whether you have a W-2 or 1099 or you're just professional investor, you're always earning, investing, and repeating, right? That's a never ending cycle wherever you are, right?
Yeah.
As long as you're an investor. But the W-2 capital, really started with, I am an introvert. I don't know. And everybody I tell that to, they're like, no, you're not. And I'm like, well, no, I am. Like, you put me in a room full of people that I don't know and I shut down. You put me in a room full of people that I do know and I'm probably going to shut down just as much. I just, behind a keyboard and a mouse, I'm good. I'm okay.
Yeah.
But you put me physically in front of somebody and I don't like it. So going to local RIAs and things of that nature, when I didn't have any friends who were, interested in investing, it was tough. That was tough for me. But, at the time I was working from home quite a bit. I used Zoom quite a bit, and I was joining masterminds that were not real estate investing, but they were just for other aspects of my life, like how to be a better husband, how to be a better father and whatnot. And I was seeing what these guys were doing. And I was like, why can't I do that with other investors? Right. Surely I'm not the only introverted investor who hates going to RIA meetings. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, the closest RIA meeting for me at the time was 30 to 45 minutes away.
Mm-hmm.
And number one, I didn't want to drive that far after working all day, and leave my pregnant wife home, by herself. Just something about that did not mesh with me. So I started this mastermind. It's that where we have people all over the country. I like to joke and say it's international, because we have had members from Germany who invest in the States. One of the members who, when he joined, he was deployed in Kuwait, and he was there for like 6 months or something like that while he was a member, still investing or whatnot. And then now we've got a member, he's still a member, but we've got another member who splits her time between Haiti I was reminded the other day that Haiti is in the U.S. or something like. I was like, look, I don't know. It's outside the continental U.S. Like, if you're in Alaska, to me, you're international, right? Or if you're in Hawaii, you're international. So, so we get together, and it's really expanded ever since I got laid off. Right. I mean, we went probably a year and a half of meeting, and it was a small group of us of, I think maybe we had 10 at the most, right? And we'd get on Zoom calls, and everybody would have their moment to say, for us to hold them accountable for stuff, but then also tell us what they accomplished doing last week.
Mm-hmm.
And now, that was like one call a week. And now we're up to 22 calls a month. We've got over 55 members, I think 56 and 57. Those invites went out today. But it's just one of those things. It's just a growing community, and to kind of sit back and see all these relationships build and blossom, and deals happen when I'm not even involved. I just get to hear all the success about it. It's really cool. It's definitely really cool. But the main focus, my one-liner is, how 30 to 40-year-old married men and women struggle with stress and anxiety to financially provide for their families.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what we do at the W2 Capitalist, is surround you with like-minded people so that you can do this. You can invest in real estate. You can get the confidence you need. You can get the experience from other people who are already doing this, so that you can do it too, and you can eliminate that stress and anxiety.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's definitely important to, like, they always say, like, the 5 people you're around,
Yeah.
You need to reach up, and reach up into more people.
Yep.
So a lot of people are in situations where they don't have anybody in their immediate life or in their local, like I was back in North, where I came from. I didn't have anybody around me that was doing real estate investing.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why I started the podcast, right, was like,
there you go.
I'm in other masterminds, and people, they want to learn or whatever. So I put out a little bit of info, but it's definitely important to get around other people to kind of like reassure that, hey, this is right and it does work. And
Yeah.
what do you need help
Yeah.
with? And if you said you're going to do this, why haven't you done it yet? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Keeping each other accountable.
I hate the line, but I love the line when a member will come into a call and they're like, damn it, I was not getting this done, or I got this done 2 hours ago because I did not want to show up on this call and tell you guys that I did not get this done. I was like, love it. That's what you're paying for. I mean, that's why, that's your price for admission right there. So you can have that guilt trip of coming onto the call and getting your stuff done. But it's just amazing to see. We've got a guy who joined about 9 months ago. I think he joined right when I was laid off, and he's now has his third deal under contract, and he's doing really, really well.
Sweet.
Individual results may vary, but
it's
one of those things where he's really been getting after it. He's been very consistent on coming to the calls. And the one thing that I highly encourage, like when you sign up, there's a form you got to fill out for all of your contact information. And once you do that, you have access to the entire directory, right? Of how do you get in hold of people. And when a new member comes in, a lot of them say, okay, well, here's what I want to do. I want to, for one member a week, I want to reach out to somebody I don't know and just get to know them, right? And get to networking. And it's incredible to see the relationships that are built and the deals that are done and the experience that swaps hands. A lot of newbies will email me or reach out and say, look, I don't have any experience, but I really want to be part of your mastermind. I was like, okay, well, we've got a process, but it's not based on experience. Right. And they're like, well, I don't know what I can provide to the mastermind in return. Cause that's one thing about the mastermind, right? Is you come to get advice, but you also, you need to provide something in return. Right. And when I realized this, it made no sense to me whatsoever. But when a new person comes in, they ask a question that I have been through before. And that's one of the things that is the main rule of the mastermind is when somebody asks a question, you cannot answer with, well, I heard this on Justin's podcast, or I read this on Justin's blog, or, I read this somewhere else, or I heard somebody else talk about it. The only way that you can answer is based on my experience. Here's what I found to be true. Right. And I will call you out on it. Other members will call you out on it. I know when it's about to get lively, when somebody said, because I've said this before, is like, really, tell me about your experience with this particular topic that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And then they start backtracking real quick, like, well, I was like, all right, so just remind everybody of the rule, But
no, that's good because you want people to have actual experience instead of just talking.
Yeah.
But that's hard too at the same time because everybody's listening to so much content now, much podcast and seeing so much Instagram and Facebook and all this stuff. It's like pretty much everything that we talk about or that people talk about is like they see it on other content places. So it's really hard to have that original content of yourself, but at least know, what to do.
And the originality is not what we're looking for. It is, hey, I've been there, I've done it. It's not because of something. It might be because of something I heard, but I'm telling you from when I went through exactly what you were just asking about, here's my experience. Right. And it just helps justify their comments versus somebody coming on and talking about it. Right. Or them hearing about it, because it justifies action, people taking action. And back to the newbies, when they come in and they're worried about what can I provide the podcast or provide the mastermind. It is those questions, right? Because for us guys who have been there before, gone through an experience that you have no experience with yet, it helps us to educate you. We get more out of educating you than you probably get out of our answer. And so it's completely reciprocal, even though we're trying to tell you, hey, this is why, or this is what happens. But for us to relive those memories and kind of go through it, we're reminding ourselves, hey, this is what we went through. We are, we do have that notch on our belt to say we've went through this before. So when newbies come in, I just remind them, look, bring your questions, because that new life, that new energy coming into the group sometimes sparks some really, really good conversations. So
Yeah.
it's for all experience levels. Right?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. You know, I'm reading this book right now, Limitless, by Jim Quick, and it talks about it
Yeah.
in there. He's like, you know, study stuff like you're going to teach it to somebody else. And if you have the opportunity, teach that to other people, because it just cements it in your mind even more.
Yeah.
So, so back to the W-2 part, and then people trying to leave their jobs. I think that's like an important topic in this conversation, because both of us have done it, and a lot of people are doing it, especially now with COVID, right? It's like
Yeah.
people have the
Yeah.
opportunity. So what are some tips about how to transition like from a W-2 job to like full-time real estate?
Yeah.
When should they do it? How long should they wait if they're on the fence or whatever?
Well, and to be clear, you don't have to want financial freedom from your W-2 to be a W-2 capitalist, right? And the way that I look at it is, if to be a W-2 capitalist, you're looking for one of three things. Number one, that is it, right? You're looking for that financial freedom, become your own boss, never work for anybody ever again. The
Mm-hmm.
number two thing is, you absolutely love your job, but you realize you're not going to build the kind of wealth that you want to build just by working your W-2 job. And so
Right.
you want to start building something more along the lines of some legacy wealth. If you start having kids, you need to start thinking about, is this your first kid, by the way?
No, man, I got 4
Okay.
kids.
Oh,
Oh
all
my
right.
gosh, I
So,
can't even
okay.
say
So,
that. It's like hard. I'm like, oh.
all right. So at some point in time, maybe you've already had this thought, but so my oldest is 6, and I've been thinking about, all right, what kind of legacy am I going to leave him and his sisters, and what am I going to do? So we started making some moves last year, which again, I had thought about, but never really took action on, because of what you were saying, is that my mind was just so wrapped up in the W-2, I really couldn't think clearly or really
Mhm.
focus. But so that's number 2. Number 3 is, you just want to build a bigger nest egg, right? You realize that your 401k, why it may be doing really good right now when the stock market's doing really good, there's some things, at least in my imaginary crystal ball, that say you're going to wish you could be able to take some of that money out right now and hold on to it, because I think we're about to be on a slippery slope with the stock market, also the real estate market, but it's not as fluctual or whatnot. So yeah, so a W-2 capitalist fits in one of those 3 buckets, right? And I totally forgot your question about that. I got off on a tangent.
It was just like, what can people do to prepare to transition?
Oh, to
And then at what
transition.
point? And then what point do they just need to pull the trigger?
Yeah, and I think everybody's journey is a little different,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have to look at, if you've got young ones or whatnot. I'm not a risk taker. And that's, I think I would be further along in my journey than if I took more risk. But I stone cold looking at you right now, I would still have a W-2 if I was not laid off,
Right. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I wouldn't have the guts to do what you did
Yeah.
and just say, all right, guys, I'm out. I mean, because it was at the time I was making the most money I've ever made, and it was the easiest money I've ever made.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
I was
kind
in
of
the
sitting
same
back and
spot.
saying, all
Yeah.
right, I'm spending 8 hours a day here. It's still worth it.
Yeah.
And then so I don't, so I can't really advise people on that, because I didn't really have the courage to do it myself, right? When I got the call and say, hey, we got to let you go, I was like, my instant thought was, oh, how are we going to financially provide? And I was like, oh, because we have all these rental properties, that's how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
So I would just encourage everybody, if depending on where you are in the journey, if you're just starting out, don't even think about that. Don't even think about, oh, I've got to get a certain amount of doors. Focus on getting door number 1. Focus
Mm-hmm.
on getting door number 1. And one of the things that I realized as I did pay attention to, hey, our rental income is starting to take over, pay for all of our expenses. And then what I was earning was just, more money for us to invest and whatnot. It changed my mindset on what kind of employee I was. right? And not that it freed up that mental capacity, like, oh, if I don't do good on my sales quota here, then I'm going to be up to be let go. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, I don't really care if I'm let go.
I
It's
know.
okay because I don't really need the money. But it was one of those things where it was a shift for me. And, it helped me manage the people that I manage a lot better. It helped me talk to my boss with a stroke of confidence that I didn't have, because I was no longer a yes, sir, whatever you want, sir. It was, well, here's my opinion,
Yeah.
because you pay me to be in the trenches with these guys, and here's what I'm seeing. Here's what we're doing that's working. I like your idea, but let's collaborate on this. And just saying, yes, sir, let me go implement that for you, sir. And that might be why I got let go. But again, it's one of the best things ever happened. So it's a hard question for me to answer, because everybody's journey is so different.
Mm-hmm.
If for those of you who are wanting to get out of your W-2, focus on just getting the next door, right?
Yeah.
And it is a rough. I can never flip or wholesale while I'm working at W-2. That's when we focused on buy and hold. So get that first or next door, and then start building that momentum. And then once you get to a point, my wife and I have like an annual State of the Union where we sit down. It needs to be more frequently, but it's not, because of the number of kids we have. We're not as, don't put 4 on me, sir. But
well, my oldest is 13, so he's like
okay.
self-sufficient. So he's kind of like 3.5, let's say.
Okay. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, we have 3, 6 and under. So it's
okay. That's a lot of work.
It's getting supper time, and they're about to get loud. So if you hear them, I apologize.
I hear you.
But yeah, it's just, don't focus on this thing that's unrelatable just yet. Focus on what you can do now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And replacing your income with positive cash flowing properties is the best way to do that.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And
far.
as far as the wholesale thing, I do feel there's so many people doing it right now, and that type of thing. I feel like you should look at it more as you're trying to find off-market deals that, like, for me, I like contact a lot of sellers to sell their houses and stuff, and either flip or keep as rental properties. But I'm looking at all the deals as numbers for me to do a rental. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm trying to find rental property. If they don't kind of quite fit my numbers, well, maybe they'll fit somebody else's numbers. You know what I mean? But it's not like I had.
And to me, that's what wholesaling should be about, right? Where you're truly trying to help out somebody who's in a particular situation where they're ready to get rid of a property, and not come and hustle them and tell them how crappy their property is just so you can earn another 1,000 or 2.
Which
to me, that's
which a lot of people do. I even turned down, or I advised 2 sellers just this week, and I was like, I decided not even to offer them and say, hey, maybe this is like the better way to go, because they're older and I don't want to like take advantage or this and that. You know what I mean? So it's definitely a good way to go, but not the only way to go. So so Jay, you mentioned real quick, this is the last thing I want to touch on about the future economy, like what's coming down the pipeline. A lot of people are scared to get into investing. What's your quick thoughts on that?
We've been riding this train for a long time. I mean, real estate's been up. Things are still up, and it's amazing to see when houses hit the market, how quickly they sell and how quickly they sell above asking. A couple of things I think factor into that. Number one, definitely the interest rate is going on. I think with COVID, people are now forced to work from home or electing to work from home. And thank God that's an option, right? With all the technology that we have available to us. So they're realizing that their 3-bedroom, 2-bath with a couple of kids and no office space doesn't really fit their world anymore. They need a dedicated space, right? So I think that's driving some of this demand. One thing I can't get past is that a lot of economists will tell you that approximately 70 million Americans live paycheck to paycheck. It's a study done several years ago. And throughout 2020, I think the height of it was 51 million Americans were laid off.
Yeah.
right?
I know. Yeah.
So they were laid off through the CARES Act. CARES Act says, hey, we're not going to do any foreclosures for non-payment. We're going to offer this forbearance piece, which we're going through, by the way. We applied for, not that we needed to, but I wanted to, right?
Mhm.
I applied for it, told them my situation, provided proof I was laid off due to COVID. And because I wanted this front row seat of what's going on with forbearance, because I see all these other different things from all these other different people. And they're like, you're contradicting this person over here. This person over here is contradicting this other person. So what the hell's really going on?
Uh-huh.
Right. So we did that. And I'll get to that. Remind me to come back around for that just a minute. But so we've got that, right? So we've got foreclosures are not happening right now due to no payments, right? Which is really the only way that a bank will foreclose on you. So those have dramatically dropped off. Well, with the CARES Act, if you had a federally backed loan, you had 6 months initially, and then after the 6 months, you could apply for it again to where you would have up to a year for forbearance. So let's just say you apply for forbearance in April, you have up to April of 2020 before that expires, and then you're going to expect to be making additional, start making some payments. The private lending institutions had an option to do whatever they wanted to, right? And that's what we have as a private loan or private mortgage. And so I have been under the impression that there's this huge windfall of foreclosures that are coming, right? And they're like, because the way that my private mortgage loan was written is that if you accept forbearance, the moment that you don't say, hey, I'm good, whatever, all the missed payments that you've made in the past, you have to come up with a lump sum, right?
Yeah.
And right now our lump sum is like a little over 18,000. That's what it is. And I'm thinking, how many people that got laid off that are in forbearance have that kind of money laying around?
I know. I have the same thing. I'm like in the same boat. I'm like, how is this going to work? And I don't understand.
So here's what happened here recently, and this is why I wanted to go through this whole process, is my lender sent me a letter and said, hey, we are changing the terms of your loan. And I was like, normally I would be kind of pissed about this, but when they did this, I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. Let's see how this plays out. But it is a very interesting move to kind of help protect the market, right? Is that they said, hey, you don't have to pay a lump sum to get back in good standing. We're not even going to extend your maturity date by X number of months from your missing payments. What we're going to do is that on your maturity date, the money that is now didn't get paid, that's in forbearance, right, for those payments that you missed, you just have to come and pay that as a lump sum
On the maturity date. So in
on the
30
maturity
years
date,
or 27 years or whatever you got left.
whatever the case is. Yeah. For us, it is 27 years because we've been here for a few years.
I know. See, I did my research. No,
there you go. Very good. Very good. Yeah. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, well, that is going to help a lot of people, that have, now I don't know what federally backed mortgages are doing, but privately backed mortgages, if they all are doing that, which I don't think there's going to be any rogue banks that do that, that is definitely going to help a lot of people, because most folks stay in their homes for 5-10 years at the most. So for them to come up with a year's full of missed payments in one lump sum, how big of a deal is that when you go to sell a property that you've already been in for 5 to 10 years? That equity's already there. You know what I mean?
Just take it out of the equity. Yeah.
Take it out of the equity. So I think that is I'm sitting back, and I don't know if this is the right way to look at it or not, but I'm kind of licking my chops and saying, all right, foreclosures are coming.
You think they are, even with all that help?
Well, no. And now this new move by at least my private mortgage lender, I'm like, wow, maybe this whole downfall of things is not going to happen. So I'm kind of sitting back and waiting to see what the next move is. I still think, the second stimulus check was sent out, which was a joke. I
Was
I
it?
still think there's way too many people living paycheck to paycheck that were laid off that
Was there a
don't
second
have the
stimulus
means to.
check sent out? I don't even know.
Yeah, there was. It was. Uh, what was the first one? The first one was what, $1,200 per person, I think, or something
Uh-huh.
like that. And the second one was like 600. And the only way, one of the reasons I know that is because the memes I kept seeing in social media was,
Yeah. I saw
you're
the
seeing
600
where,
memes. I just didn't know it
yeah.
actually if it went out. I didn't know if it actually went out or not. I don't know.
Well, it was, it was like Congress, who gets paid $190,000 a year. They spent 9 months debating, and then it did the math of how much, they earned over those 9 months,
Yeah.
debating if you should receive $600 or not.
Yeah, it's
Like,
crazy.
yeah, I hate the government.
Yeah, it's outrageous.
uh,
So I guess the moral of the story is who knows what's going to happen. It would appear
exactly.
that we're going to have some sort of a downturn, right? Because there's no way. A normal thought would be there's no way we can continue sustaining this upward growth in real estate, anyways, with all these job loss and um, forbearances happening. But I'm sure they're going to come up with some sort of, especially with Biden going in there. Whether you like him or you hate him, then he's all about giving away free stuff,
Yeah, I
So
don't.
maybe it'll just help a lot of people, and we'll kind of avoid it. Time will tell. So I guess
I
don't
don't
put your
I
eggs
don't
in one
think we can
basket.
yeah, I don't think we can avoid it. I think, this is all of my assumptions or kind of viewpoints on where we're headed with the market was based on what's happened so far.
Hmm.
I don't think COVID is by far anywhere over, right? I don't believe the vaccine is going to do what people think it's going to do. I've seen some studies that show there are new strands, just like the flu. Like every year, there's usually, you go to the doctor, you get a shot for a flu shot, and then a couple months later, you go back and get the flu, and you're like, well, I got the
Yeah.
flu shot. Well, you got the flu shot. It covered strand A, but now we got strand B, and you got strand B, and that's why you have the flu now, even though you got the flu shot. So there are studies out there now that are showing there is a even more contagious strand of corona that's coming, and it's already in the UK and stuff like that. And it's only a matter of time before it comes over here, right? And so I think we're a really long way of being done with COVID,
Hmm.
uh, and how that affects our economy altogether, right?
Yeah.
I think we're pretty far away, probably a few years actually.
Yeah.
So, um,
So I
but
guess
what's in
really,
store for 2021? I am looking at there's still going to be a downturn in the market.
yeah.
It'll be later this year for sure. But we'll see. We'll see.
Either way, just everybody do your numbers right, and still
Yeah.
don't just wait on the sidelines because who knows, it might not come for another 5 years or it might come next month. So
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not sitting around waiting for any mass thing to hit. I mean, I'm making offers like yesterday. I submitted a little over 1.5 million in cash offers, right? No takers because they're all overpriced properties, right?
yeah,
And but I did get to let some people know that they've got some liens on the properties that they might want to do something about,
there you
because if
go.
not, it's going to go to tax deed auction,
Yeah.
and they may not own their property after a few years
Well, they'll come back
here in
around to
Florida.
you, I'm sure. So that'd be
Yeah.
good. Well,
So,
Jay, thanks for being here. Where can people find out more about you, what you do, your group, your website, all your stuff, all that kind of good things?
yeah. So W2capitalist.com. I almost forgot the .com. W2capitalist.com is the landing page. You can hit it to go to the podcast. So after you get through listening to Justin's podcast, come over and listen to mine. And then that's links for the mastermind. If you're interested in joining the mastermind, there's links to that. You do have to take a quiz. It's like a 5-minute quiz, because we don't let just anybody in. I'm looking for people who are very focused and dedicated and committed to be in there. And that's kind of the first step in that, is to take the quiz. It takes about 5 minutes. It's not a big deal. And then email me, right? J@w2capitalist.com.
Okay. What about Instagram? You got Instagram?
So social media is a funny thing right now.
Yeah.
I am on Instagram right now. I will not be here pretty soon.
Yeah. Okay. Deal.
I we've in this, it's a funny landscape right now. I have two real big groups on Facebook. Both of those are going to be moved off of Facebook this year. I'm actually starting my own social media platform. And you can go to w2capitalist.com/pro to find out about that. It is in the very early stages of that, but yeah, it's social media is an interesting platform right now that I will be off all of the main ones here by the end of the year.
Yeah, better watch out. They'll kick you off just like Parler.
I would love to have that kind of attention to
I would too. I'm
way,
like, dude, if I could be big enough to be kicked off, perfect.
And on that point, real quick, that is a whole publicity stunt. If Parler wanted to, they can do their own thing, right? If their app's not on the App Store, who cares?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
That's just going to mean more people are going to go to Google Play or wherever.
I got kicked off of Google, I think, too. And Google.
Oh, did it? Did it? Okay.
Google took their website down or something. But anyways, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But either way, Jay, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. If you guys have any questions or anything, reach out to Jay, reach out to me. I can connect you, and all the stuff will be in the show notes. So thanks again, man. Have a great afternoon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Justin. We'll see you, buddy.
Bye-bye. Wait, I don't know how to stop this thing. Why is it a different view? Oh, there it is. I had it collapsed down. I'll have to make sure